Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Get in Tune. I am Michael Gracia, and I have a great show. We already got some comments. Dylan says, "Hello, how are you, man?" Brian is saying, "Eric, that is our guest. We'll be bringing him on." And Dylan says, "Hello, Eric. I'm Dylan. I'm a cartoonist too." Awesome. We have, um, like I said, a great show. Erik Doescher is on tonight, who I have been a fan of. I don't know how long. I found one day his comic Critters on Instagram, fell in love with the work, and thought it was amazing, and have been following ever since. And now he's doing some new stuff with Instagram, experimenting with some other strips, still doing Critters. But man, I got a lot to talk about with him because I am such a fan. Let's bring on Erik Doescher.
Hi,
Hello. How you doing?
good. You forgot to make your Wiz Wednesday announcement.
Oh my God, thank you. Dude, I get so excited sometimes for my guests and I forget things. Yes, okay. Wiz Wednesday. I post every morning, at the Wiz Comic. Where is it? Right there. At the Wiz Comic between 9 a.m. Between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. Eastern. Again, everything depends when I wake up. I even did a little TikTok today of it, flipping it around like a little experiment. You know, um, Not animation, but a little experiment of like a motion comic slightly. And I got that going on today. I thought I enjoyed. I liked the strip today. I had a lot of fun with that
I
one.
was impressed. You have one panel, I think, with like 50 rabbits in it or something.
Oh yeah, there was a bunch of rabbits.
That's a lot
I'll,
of
I'll
work.
I'll tell you, I did that one.
Not to
Uh,
spoil the gag, anybody.
no. Now they have to read it to understand it. But yes, no. When I drew that strip, I I knew I was. I usually draw the Wiz Tuesday nights, okay, just because of my schedule. I usually do it the night before, and some days I'm like, how do I make my joke easier to draw so I don't have to deal with a lot and stay up late? Um, and I was like, this joke won't work if I only throw one or two rabbits. So I'm like, I don't care. I have to. So then I decided, what's going to make myself easier? They're all going to be white rabbits, and I'll just color in the background so they pop. And that's how I handled that one
Did
there.
you draw three and just like copy and paste, or are they all?
No. Those were all just kind of quick.
Yeah, I was going
Um,
here trying to see like what if you're using any
yeah,
tricks to like. Um,
yeah, no.
oh, that's
I just did a yeah, I just kind of made little circles and arms out and tried to. That's why I drew the big one in the front so everyone could be kind of covered up by him and kind of go into him and try.
some tricks.
Yeah, and like I had an idea because like when I write, and I believe I've said this, I tend to write more for animation than for actual comics. Like I always think my stuff would be better in animation. And I am an animator, and I hope to get to animating the Wiz at some point. My Monday night live draws are now about the animation process and doing step by step.
Yeah, I've
Uh,
been watching those. I
oh,
really love those.
thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna do.
The
I haven't
character
decided.
turn was really impressive. Like how
Oh,
you got that animated and stuff.
thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, I'm going to do the other guy, the other character this week in my spare time. And next week I haven't decided since Christmas is on a Monday, I'm not going to be doing it on a Monday. Um Maybe I'll animate a little holiday scene, a little holiday picture, or I'll jump onto storyboards for that strip. It kind of depends on how I feel when I wake up, you know.
That's my main job, storyboards.
Oh, really?
And
Cool,
you went
cool.
to animation school, you said, right?
I went to school for visual art,
Mhm.
but I focused on animation. So the first thing I did is I went, and this will be an interview on you, but since we're asking questions about me, I'll just give you
Yeah,
a little
yeah,
background. No,
ask
no, it's
more
okay.
questions and vice versa.
I am. I first went to the local community college here. It was Westchester Community College, and I got my first job at the end of my first semester. So about a month and a half before I turned 19, I started working professionally, and I was studying a program called Director at the time. I don't know if you know what Director is, but um, it is basically Flash kind of took over for what director was, and this guy who owned this small educational video game company came to the school, wanted to find kind of cheap labor, but people who had the ability to do stuff, and he hired me. The first month I worked there, I was an intern, and then he decided to start paying me so I could do more work, more hours, whatever. He was for it was 90, just turned 95, 1995. So I was making decent money.
Sweet.
And then that job led to another job and so forth and whatever. But when I was going for my bachelor's at Empire State College, I got another job working at another company doing like some of those Flash banners that were on the web in the late 90s, early 2000s, little Flash animations. But I was working with old school animators, like people who worked a long time ago, and from Hollywood or wherever, or working in New York. It was like old timers there, just animating, and I got trained by them. So I had school training on the software, but the animation training was by these old timers. So I learned traditional animation, I did some of that, but I was mostly the computer guy. And I was using Flash since it was Macromedia, and I'm still using it now that it's Adobe Animate.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I love
I
it.
asked because my daughter is my oldest daughter is in animation school right now.
And if she's studying animation, like software, she's doing Harmony and stuff like that now.
No, actually more traditional, like hand drawn.
Oh, okay, traditional. That's great. Yeah. That's great. I love traditional. Actually, you should tell her to go watch both my interviews with Tina Nowrosky, who I've had on here. She worked on the Cuphead video game, which was all traditional. Yeah, she's an awesome person. She has some really cool work. I should get her back on sometime. She's very fun to chat with. But yeah, so anyway, that's enough about me right now. I know. Listen, I appreciate that you watch regularly. I love it. It's nice to be able to talk to someone who knows my shows, but also considers themselves a fan of mine. And not just my shows, but the Wiz. You told me you like the Wiz, and I really appreciate everything. But it's enough about getting to know me. I want to learn about you. I love your work. So let's get into what some people would call like your secret origin. How did you get into art? What were some of the things? Who were your influences? What did you look at? What do you like?
I guess like it's a pretty similar story to most of your guests. Like being a kid and being into comics and comic strips, and probably the same comics and comic strips as most of your guests too. So I was reading the Marvel comics when I was a kid. Like if you asked me when I was a kid what I wanted to be when I grew up, it'd probably be like a comic book illustrator, like drawing X-Men or Spider-Man or something like that.
Okay.
And I also really loved the comic pages, like Peanuts and Bloom County and like Mother Goose and Grimm, BC, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They were all the pages in like the 70s and 80s. My Calvin Hobbes kind of came after I was in college, so I was a kind of fan of that when I was an adult.
Yeah.
And then like also like on your wall back there again, like Frank Rosetta, I really loved his stuff when I was young, and Norman Rockwell. I had like this huge Norman Rockwell book, and I would like try to copy all his drawings all the time, just for his storytelling, and his pictures are so beautiful. And Tokine movies, like Star Wars, rocked my world when I saw it the first time. And that's kind of where I started getting a passion for cinema, I think. Like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, there was like a look for one of those that had all the storyboards in it, and I was really like into copying that kind of stuff as well. It's just the usual like nerdy kid in the 80s, 70s thing, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. So, and who were who were some of the artists that really? I mean, I know you mentioned Frazetta, but you were mentioning more like comic titles. Who were some people that really popped out to you though, as like, wow, this is, somebody I want to like either emulate or learn from, or
for comic stuff,
it could be art in general, but yeah,
there's all the John Byrne, but again, Frazetta and Rockwell were like really up there. I had really thick books for both of them, and
yeah,
I used to read them all the time. And Ralph Bakshi, like his movies and a lot of his art books back then, because I was really into Lord of the Rings, and he was doing the film for that at the time. So I copied that kind of stuff. And for the comic strip stuff, definitely like Charles Schultz, which I still kind of draw like a lot.
Yeah. I'm just looking. By the way, I'm just looking at your work down here. When I look down, I'm looking at your work. It's I'm going to show you your Instagram later for those who haven't.
I should three Instagrams. I have strips and then straights where I'm kind of like posting some of my illustration stuff, and then I have Erik D sketches where I kind of post my Borderlands like fan arty type stuff.
Cool. Well, we're going to look at everything. I have your comics up now, but
yeah. So.
Excuse me. Yeah. So, you mentioned you do storyboards mostly during the day. That's your primary job. Are you storyboarding film, television, animation, live action? What do you storyboard?
I do film and games. I've been working at Gearbox, and here's the patch, like entertainment and / software for like over 20 years. I started as a level designer back after I got married and wanted like a real job and not freelancing for a while. And so I started there as a level designer and worked on Counter-Strike early on, and another game we had called Brothers in Arms. And then Borderlands came along, which is like what we're really famous for. It's like a very kind of comic book style game, so it's kind of a perfect fit for me. So I kind of moved on to art there, started doing like character design and concept art. And then we started doing more intricate cutscenes at that point as time went on, so I just kind of remembered my love of movies and sort of said, I can do storyboards too, and just started doing them. I never really trained as a storyboard artist, but I kind of just sort of I just trust what I can imagine in my eyes, which is basically how would Spielberg have done this in Raiders of the Lost Ark? And that kind of answers all my storyboarding questions whenever I'm working, which is like my favorite movie.
That's fantastic. I've never done storyboards to the level that you've done them, but for companies. But I have done some storyboard work in the past. And
oh, cool! Yeah,
I love that stuff. I love. I've done character design. That first company I was talking to you about, I started off as a character designer, and then because how well I knew the director software, which we were animating in, they made me an animator shortly after, and I mean, that's always been like my passion. So
one thing still on my bucket list is doing like the comic book, because that's what I wanted to do like when I was a very little kid.
Like a superhero style book.
But comics, they're really, really, really hard work. I'm very impressed with all your guys who come on here and do them in their spare time or their full time or whatever. It's like hard. It's like a lot of work.
No,
so,
it is. Go ahead.
With storyboards, the fun stuff for comics for me is kind of like the layout and the storytelling, and so I can just do that like really fast and sketchy and not have to worry about like finishing the art and inking and things like that, and doing 28 pages of it. So storyboards actually kind of fulfilled a lot of that for me, but it would still be cool to do a comic one day and put my name on it.
No, that'd be cool, and then you're gonna have to come back on here and promote it.
Yeah.
But we got a comment here from Brian who says you got to talk about your college experience. Did you have an interesting college experience? You got some stories to share?
Now I'm getting really embarrassed because people are watching going up.
I mean, you don't have to talk about anything you don't want to, but if there's some good stories.
No, I have no wild college experience. I'm just like, oh, great. All my friends are starting to watch this now. Okay.
Well, first of all, where'd you go to school?
Okay. I went to school at the School of Visual Arts in New York City, where I met Phil, who's going to be your guest next week and has been your guest previous.
Well, next week I will say this. It's my holiday show. No, it's not a spoiler. It's just it's a holiday show. Phil will be on with a bunch of other artists. Excellent. So it's what I do every year. I just bring on a bunch of artists and we have a conversation and promote each other. And that's the holiday show. And he'll be part of it. But yes, you met Phil there. Continue.
And I met a lot of great guys there, talented guys. And so SVA, I can tell you my SVA story. So when I was a senior in high school, I wanted to still be a cartoonist. That was kind of my main thing that I wanted to be. Still, and SVA had a cartooning department, which was like super cool. So I applied there, and my aunt worked at a bank in New York City, and it was right underneath the office of DC Comics. And so like Jeanette Kahn, Joe Orlando, blah, 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 they were all like customers of her and knew her. And she was like, hey, can you write my kid like a recommendation letter? She asked Joe Orlando that. And
by the way, I went to school with Joe Orlando's son.
Oh, you did?
I went to high school with him. Yeah, junior high and high school.
Yeah. Joe Orlando ended up being my mentor and like one of the greatest influences in my life. He's an amazing man. And so anyway, like he said, well, who's this kid? You know, like have him send me his resume and some art samples, and I'll see if I want to write a letter or not, you know?
Yeah.
And so kind of like I tried to be clever about it, you know, and kind of like what I'm doing in my comic strip now, where kind of like, well, not really, but like, so I kind of drew this like little, in Mad Magazine style, this like Batman and Robin adventure where they're kind of investigating like who is Erik Doescher, you know, I kind of like drew 2 pages, and it's kind of like, you know, they're doing like the 1960s Adam West stuff, like coming up the walls and just being like really kind of goofy and silly and kind of stuff. And he really loved it and wrote me a nice recommendation letter. And that helped me get into SVA because my grades probably weren't that great at the time, just except my art grades, you know. And so I got into the school, and then I had a really, I don't know, great experience there. Like, I had Will Eisner as a teacher, you know, who wrote and Draw the Spirit.
Yeah.
Kind of caught the end of like old timers who had been there for like a long time before it kind of like switched gears maybe a few years after me. So I had Will Eisner as a teacher, and Joe Orlando as a teacher, and Harvey Kurtzman, you know, from Mad Magazine as a teacher, and Gene Colan, you know, and a lot of like really great, like all-time great Hall of Famer type artists.
Yeah.
And they're all like really big influences in me at the time, you know. I feel really privileged to have gone there at the time for that.
Yeah. No, I knew I have a friend who had a couple of those guys as teachers too, so they were still, you know, still there in the, you know, early 90s or so.
Yeah. I mean, Will Eisner taught me everything about storytelling that I know, you know, obviously that he wrote the book on it. Yeah. And he used to teach him in the class. They used to fly him up from Florida every 2 weeks to teach there. He was like so important to the school. And then Joe Orlando was like a great teacher just for like the critical eye, you know, like I'd forgotten this story, but I heard my friend Alex mention it. He's a friend of Phil's. He went to our school like recently, like during the crits every week, you know, we'd hang up our art on the wall and show it, kind of just walk along and go like, that's sellable, that's not, that's sellable, that's not, you know, just from like the whole art buyers or the editor's viewpoint, you know, which is really great because, you know, going into school, you just like drawing and everything, you know, and it's like, you don't really care. You like, you know, it's your art, you don't really think too much like if it's sellable or if it's going to be printable and stuff like that. So having somebody, because you're never exposed to that when you're just kind of just drawing by yourself when you're a kid, you know, but when being exposed to like the business side of it was like really important, and Joe was really great, you know, for that. Harvey Kurtzman, I wish I was kind of more into like my comic strip stuff, like when I had him, but I didn't. But he taught me some actually pretty valuable coloring lessons of all things, you know, so I take that from him. And Gene Colan was just a master like using reference. You know, he would have like, you could tell through his pencils, you know, he had back then they called it the morgue, I think, you know, like full of like hundreds and thousands of like newspaper clippings of different angles and of people and pictures, you know, stuff like that, which now we're so fortunate we can just like Google it on the internet whenever we need it, you know, so we don't need it. But he kind of like taught me like the real benefit of reference, you know, and of like understanding what something like really looks like before we just try to draw it, you know. And so all those kind of classes and a bunch of stuff I've probably forgotten about just sort of shaped me. And then I graduated from SVA, kind of went back home for a little while, worked at a bookstore. I figured myself out, did more samples. And then my friend Alex, who I met in school, and his friend of Phil's also, was moving to New York and said, "Want to come with me?" And so we just moved into this neat apartment on 50th Street and 9th Avenue. And then I just started freelancing right away. I kind of, Joe asked how I was doing, and I kind of went up there and showed him my work, and he gave me my first job. And then after that, I just started working pretty regularly after that.
That's
so
great.
Fortunate.
What was your first job that Joe gave you?
You'll have to tell me your first art job after this, because I always find that question very interesting. My first art job was do you know the artist John Bogdanove? He's like a Superman artist.
John what?
Bogdanove or Bogdanove or whatever. He's a Superman artist.
I'm sure. Listen, I'm a big Superman fan. I'm sure I've read his work. I'm just.
Anyway, like Joe ran the special projects department at DC Comics. They did all like the weird non-comic book art, you know, like for licensing and just for publicity and things like that. So my first job for him is like, so the regular Superman artists at the time had drawn like this, they were drawing this custom picture for Shaquille O'Neal because they heard Shaquille O'Neal really likes Superman. And so they had Superman like, or Shaquille O'Neal like dunking on Superman. And so they handed me like this Bristol board. It was all inked like in pencil really beautifully by the artist, you know, and they said color it. And like coloring is not my thing. And like, it's not my thing, but it was a job. And so I took it. And so I was like really, and back then, you know, you had the Doc Martin dies. I had to go out and buy those. I did a few experiments on paper first. And then finally I just like took a deep breath and kind of dived in. And I guess I did okay because they hired me after that. But that was kind of scary first job for me, you know, because like if I'd ruined that, that would have been like a whole original piece of work that they would have had to redraw, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe Shaquille O'Neal still has that picture thing somewhere for all I know.
Wow. I mean, listen, that's a pretty cool first gig. You know, I mean, I always complain about my coloring, but I would never have worked in the industry because I would have said no right away.
It's been a lot of times in my life where I've just said yes rather foolishly, but you know, it's I know you have like your color blindness that would have been very hard for you to say yes to, you know, without taking a lot of risk. But like once there was a job offered to me for a book, can you airbrush? I said sure, and I had to go out and buy an airbrush and learn it, you know, to do the book. It actually came out kind of cool. Airbrush was pretty fun before Photoshop, you know, when they had the actual you could do it on there. And other examples too, probably off and on where I've said yes I shouldn't have. But then after the Superman Shack picture, I started doing work for his special projects or licensing office. For those unfamiliar with licensing, it's actually a big part of the animation industry. You know, pretty much every animated character has a style guide that the corporate owner of the animated character creates to sell and license the images of the character. And they hire artists basically to exactly copy the style of the character in the animation or the show. And we draw like clip art or like poses or kind of splash pages. It's all kind of anonymous, and they pay us, and then they put it in this big book called a style guide. And then if you're a t-shirt company or a party company who wants to decorate their plates or whatever with Batman art, you know, they call DC Comics and say, hey, can we sort of like pay you a monthly thing to lease your style guides and use all the art in it, and then they let them do that, you know. And now it's just kind of starting to come into, that part of the industry was getting really serious, like right when I was breaking in. And so I did a lot of style guide work for DC Comics early on, like the animated Batman, you know, that Bruce Timm, that show started. So my first style guide piece is from the Mask of Phantasm movie. I still have it somewhere around, which is kind of cool. And yeah, and then that doing those Batman style guides kind of let me go everywhere. And I mean, led to everything else, really. And the good thing about Joe Orlando is like he believed in me, and it's tough in the industry because to break in, as you know, a lot of your guests and watchers might know, you know, and like so I still remember like I'd done the Superman Shaq thing, and then he said, "Okay, I got more work for you," and so he kind of just takes me, you know, pulls me over here to the editor's, the art director's office, who's doing those style guides, and said, like, "This is Erik Doescher. He's good. You use him." And Joe is the vice president of DC, so they had to. But I could never have like called up and said that, because art directors like have their artists they like to work with, and then they're not going to like give anybody else the time of day, you know, usually like new people. So at least randomly put in front of them like that, you know. So he basically kind of forced his art directors to work with me, and then they really liked working with me, and then it kind of worked out. So,
Oh, that's great. But it also kind of just goes to show, and I always say this coming as someone who is taught and who has been a student who had become friendly with instructors. That first job I told you about, I actually worked with one of my teachers from one of my college professors there. It's, you know, it's so good to I don't want to say getting good. I don't want you to think like, you know, hey, you know, but it's nice to get the professor kind of on your side to show that, you know, there's a respect there, that it's not just student and teacher, but almost you could be on the same professional level, that he sees how good you are and he will recommend you. I mean, if you weren't that kind of student in his classes, he would never have recommended you for the gigs, you know. And
yeah, I know, it's almost like a job interview, and
but that's what it is sometimes.
yeah,
You know, I've hired students of mine as interns in the past. I've hired them to do other type of work where I've paid them. I had a student who was great at editing video, and I just didn't have the time to edit video, so I hired her, and I said, "This is the pay I could offer you. If you're good with it, go and please edit. If you're not, then I understand." You know. But yeah, no, I tend to I've done that. I stay in contact. There's students I stay in contact with. I still write them letters of recommendation. I don't teach like I used to. I did college almost 20 full years of my career.
wow.
But I did about 16, 17 at one particular school, you know. But I've taught online to
SVA
school
for about 2 years after, you know, Joe died suddenly at way too early an age, and we had a few classes at SVA, a portfolio class and a cartooning class, and so I took those over for like a year or two, and that was hard. You know, it was very satisfying, but teaching is really, really hard.
It is. And outside of my private tutoring or my, you know, like cartooning lessons, I still do with young kids and some teenagers, which, by the way, my sale is on till December 23rd. You can visit my website, michaelgracia.com, for more information. Yeah, I do online, you know, I'll do online tutoring. So I'm not in the college right now. I do other stuff. I actually, and I know I don't normally talk about what I do, but you did ask before we went on, and I will explain.
I always wonder what you do.
I'll explain what I do. I take my art knowledge and my educational knowledge, and I work for an online art academy. I don't want people to know, you know, where I specifically work, but I will say I am the 2D faculty supervisor for an online art academy. So basically, it's an art school, and I work with the 2D instructors. And there's administrative work to it, but I tend to watch their reviews on students' homeworks. I watch their classrooms, and I'm making sure they're not doing anything, you know, saying bad language, and, you know, they're following the school rules, yet they're still educating properly. So I do that, and the people I work with, oh my God, some of the greatest talents in the industry. I wish I can say names. Yesterday, I will say I had a phone call with one of our instructors who is overseas, that teaches one of the comic classes that we offer.
Mm-hmm.
And we had such a great conversation. We had about a 40-minute conversation. 10 minutes was about the actual reason I called, to explain stuff about the job, like some job stuff that we had to talk about. But the other half hour was just about the industry. And and we were comparing how American comics are, the businesses versus European. And I just had this, I get to have conversations like that with people. And when we bring on, like, we just brought on a very talented character designer, again, can't name who it is, but man, just the conversations I've got to have, and to hear about the movies that they've worked on that, I'm a fan of, and I watch, on streaming, because I don't go to the theater too much anymore. But you know what I mean? Like, it's just so cool to do what I do. I truly love what I do. If I was able to do my art full time, like at one point I was able to do just art full time, I loved it in my career. But I like that I don't have to hustle about where my next gig is coming from. I enjoy that part of freelancing being gone out of my life. But yeah, no, I love all of that. I think it's I think it's a great job. I think art is, to me, it's a great, and I'm using my skills and I'm using my passion for art, and I've done almost every job that we teach, but maybe not to the level that the instructors have worked for, not like the client list, that they've had.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
Yeah, it's a really fun job. It's on Pacific time. So I actually do a 10:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. work schedule. So it's basically their 7:30 in the morning to 4:30 p.m. On their time. But yeah, man, I really love it. I get a lot of really cool stuff to do, and when like they want to start a new class, I get to scout for instructors. So like I get to spend the day looking at, or whatever time I'm doing it. I don't want to say I do it all day, because it's not usually an all day thing. But I'll spend a couple of hours a day over a period of time looking on websites like ArtStation or YouTube, and like, I don't know, let's just say this is an example. They want to do children's books illustration. I'm going to sit and look at children's book illustrators and see who, and then I go and look and see, do they have teaching experience? And I go on YouTube and see if I can find them doing any demos or something. You know what I mean? So like I basically just sit on my computer and just watch all this stuff all day while I get to look at really cool art. So and then and then outside of that part, there's administrative work I need to do, emails and whatever.
Yeah, I never did that when I was teaching, but it was still really hard.
Yeah. I mean, listen, teaching's always difficult. It's a field I respect very much. Totally. And occasionally I will say I miss the classroom. I miss being in a classroom. I miss having a group of students. But I do find ways with my private tutoring to still stay in teaching, and there's some projects in the works that I'm not ready to talk about that will include my educational background, that one day I'll announce. Hopefully, my target is like March, April of 2024 to announce them.
Well, it's cool. You got a lot of industry people at your place. SVA was great like that too. Like,
yeah,
we had no full-time teachers. Everybody was actually working in the industry at the time, and they were freelancing or worked at companies, and they would just come and teach, 1 or 2 classes. And like SVA's thing, like your teacher was a working professional, and that made a really big difference, I think, and part of what made the school special.
There was actually I was actually supposed to be a teacher at SVA at one point.
Oh, really?
Back in the mid like I want to say 2010. I don't remember the exact year. They approached me to teach social media marketing for artists because I helped develop a social media marketing class, and I had a background in it. And the school that I was working at the time had a deal with SVA about, for transferring credits and all this stuff. So they were over one time, and we got to talking with someone, and they're like, "Can you, you know, they kept tabs on me. They were interested in me." And then um, when they wrote me the email and asked me, I went to the school I worked for, and I said, "Hey, listen, can I change my schedule to work at SVA? That I'm here from this time to this time. I'll go teach the class at SVA, then I'll come back and teach night classes." And they told me no. And since I was full time with salary and benefits, I had to stay at the other school. And then SVA, basically, once you say no to SVA, they don't look at you again, which was sad because I really would have loved to have taught there. It was a school I was supposed to go to, but I couldn't go to due to health issues and, at the time. But also, if I went, I don't know where my career would be. I started, a couple of months in a semester, and I got a job. I probably wouldn't have done that at SVA. I would have been a really small fish in in this big pond, where probably at least where the classes I was in at WCC, I was maybe a medium-sized fish, So yeah, it works out. It works out. You just never know. But yeah, let's get talking about your strips, man. I'm gonna put on your just the Instagram Erik D strips, which I love that title.
Yeah.
And I want to just take a look at them. We'll go to your other Instagrams too, but I want to talk. How did Critters? If I scroll down, Critters is what you started this strip. Is that actually used to be the title, Critters comic?
Yeah.
How did you come up with this idea? I think it's brilliant. Tell us about the idea and the strip and kind of like what it's about. And I'll just click on random ones while you're talking.
I kind of always wanted to work on a comic strip. It's definitely my bucket list. And so for so off and on, just throughout the years, every once in a while, I'd start thinking about it again. And I didn't want to do something that was kind of already there. I like doing the kid characters with the kind of Peanuts vibe and stuff like that. There's a lot of great, amazing strips out there with kid characters, And so I was always trying to figure out what's my hook going to be or whatever. And then maybe one night around 5 years ago, I figured it out, kind of wrote it down my notepad on my phone, and then got busy, kind of put it down for a while, changed phones, lost the notepad. And so for a few years, I had this, feeling oh wow, I had it all figured out. I can't remember what it was that I had figured out. And so then a few years more passed, and then suddenly a year or two ago, I started drawing it again. I moved to New Hampshire because we started doing remote work at my job, and I started doing a monthly comic panel for our local paper because it comes out once a month. And then so I started doing that every month, and kind of got me into comics again, because I picked up the whole idea of hey, what's my comic strip going to be, if I do it. And then these kind of characters came to me at the time, and I kind of think it was what I thought about 5 years ago before I lost my notes. So it all worked out in the end, I guess. And so then basically last January 1st, well, I'd done a bunch of sketches kind of off and on. I'd actually even done a few strips and posted them on my other Instagram account. And then a year before, and then put it down again because I wasn't still liking it very much. And then before last year, I said, okay, I just gotta do it. Sometimes you can just drag your feet for so long, and just because it's kind of overwhelming to start, kind of a thing like that. And so on January 1st, I started doing it. And I told myself, basically, I'm going to do this like one strip a day to prove myself that I can do it, and keep going until I basically figure it out to get what I feel to a good enough spot to like submit ideas to syndicates or whatever, and then hear back from them. Because that was my goal for the year. And I just wanted to give it a try. And so like basically January 1st, I started doing one strip a day. And I didn't have any kind of lead-in strips or anything. I just basically wake up in the morning, usually maybe I come up with an idea like walking the dog the day before, and then like sketch it out in the morning, maybe, and then like once work ended, like around 6 o'clock, just draw it and post it, by the next morning. So I was doing like every day. And then when you start doing something every day, it actually can advance, or not advance, but like it can evolve like super fast. And it did. And at first I started out with just these little characters, so I didn't want to do like a kid strip, just a classic kid in a neighborhood strip. I kind of thought, oh yeah, they'll have these kind of costumes. They'll kind of like look like little sort of animals, and they have a little club in the woods where they wear costumes and kind of do their thing, and that's like a little bit different, than just staring at like kids in a strip. So that was kind of my thing. So I just started working on it and doing it every day. And then like in the springtime, by the springtime I kind of figured it out, and I was pretty happy with it. And then I did one comic. I was doing a tie-in comic with my other Instagram account. Before Critters, I had done for Gearbox a Borderlands comic strip when Borderlands 3 released, called Borderlands Scamps. It's kind of like hyper violent Peanuts, basically, where they kind of have like, our game is pretty hyper violent, so they have like guns and they're like blowing people apart, and there's intestines everywhere and things like that, but still kind of that cute little Peanuts looking characters. I kind of rendered them all as like little Peanutsy type things, and not they're like really big, bulky, intense personas. And we put that out in social media like during the release. I did around maybe like 50 or 60 strips. I kept on doing that in my other Instagram account after the whole marketing push died down. Anyway, I was doing a tie-in with that, and so I did like a Spring is Here strip, and then I did a Spring is Here strip for Scamps as well, so the Scamps one was like, spring is here, flowers are on the ground, and like and one of them says, time to go shooting and make some new fertilizer, like the bodies will create fertilizer. And then that's a very Scamps joke. And then on the Critters side, I kind of did spring is here, and then like look at all the colors. And I'd never done a color strip before for Scamps. I kind of wanted to see what the colors look like. And then in the end, I kind of drew myself in at the very end, going like, oh, I hate coloring, I hope this doesn't last, kind of deal. It's part of the gag.
Yeah.
And then after that, like I thought, oh, it's kind of funny having like me show up in the last panel. And so then after that, I started actually having the character of the cartoonist and his wife, which is kind of me and my wife area, like show up in every panel. And a lot of that comes from my love of like single panel gags.
Yeah.
Like I love the 3-4 panel format, from the Peanuts style, but I also love like single panels too. So the strip kind of evolved from like being like just a 3-panel traditional gag to 3 panels a gag, and then another gag on the same subject from the first few panels, and that became like the format. So it was kind of like 2 gags for one. I thought, oh wow, that's like kind of cool, and I never saw that before, so I just sort of, it was very easy to write, because it's just me talking and coming with a gag. So I kept with it, and it was kind of fun. And after that, it kind of just turned, that's like I think when it settled into its own thing, and then I just started, it got pretty consistent at that point, And so that was around June. And so I figured, okay, now it's time to like send it to the syndicates, because I've always wanted to try to do that, And I wasn't under any, I know how hard that is. There's probably like, I'm sure there's zillions of horror stories out there of like sending your work to the syndicates. They get like thousands of things every year, and like maybe
I got my rejection letters somewhere piled away from years ago.
We all have them, I guess. And so I sent it, and to the big 3, creators, Universal Press, and King. And then after that, I figured, okay, I'm gonna keep doing this every day until I hear back. So maybe I check in and see them still doing a day. Keep going all summer. I never hear back from any of them, like 3 or 4 months. And now it's like September coming around, and so I remember the Cartoonist Society. They had the Rubens this year, and a lot of the syndicate people show up to that. So I hunt down the King Features people at the Rubens and talk to the editor and go, hey, I never heard back from you. And she said, oh, like, you should have tried doing that again. Maybe we didn't see it. And so I didn't see the other editors there from the other syndicates.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I resubmitted again, and a week later I got their form letter. So I never heard back from Universal or the other creators, which I think is even worse than getting a form letter, because they can't even be bothered to email back a form letter. It's so bad, So
yeah, I've heard stories. You know what? I just realized I missed a comment from almost 20 minutes ago. But Lucas wants you to know that he and Aiden are playing Fort.
That's one of my kids.
I know, I figured. And then
kids,
how many?
5.
Wow.
Yeah, my daughter's animation student at CalArts in California, which is like a Disney school. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then the 4 kids are in high school.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thanks.
Brian says, I love your color work, but I love the black and white panels with the color punctuation panel. Works so well. That's one of the things I did really like about Critters was that last panel. Yeah,
kind of going coloring, because I wanted to make it look different, because I didn't want to confuse the reader. Like, oh, why are we suddenly switching scenes to here? So by having it colored, I kind of thought it would be sort of like enough of a jump that they really wouldn't think it's connected.
Well, that's how it feels like. When you read Critters, the stories with the kids, they're real. Or at least they're real to them. But when you go to the color, you're in the real world, and you realize that the black and white is the strip.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's on paper. That's one of the things I always enjoyed about that. But I didn't want to interrupt you when you were talking, but I have to say I'm a huge single panel fan myself. I love, even more than I love doing the Wiz, is doing single panel gags.
Absolutely. And yeah, I never see you post them though. It'd be kind of
cool.
I
don't post. That's actually what I got rejected for. I was trying to be a single panel guy. When I sent them to the syndicates, I still have a few, but you know what? When I go back, like I said, when I write, I tend to write for animation, and at least I feel my stuff would be funnier animated. And I was watching this thing. I think it was on Amazon Prime last night, and it's a whole history of I gotta look it up what it was. But right now, each episode is just about the Simpsons and basically the history, how it was made, and the story behind it and everything. And I watched like 2 or 3 episodes of it last night, and it got me thinking about when I was starting in college. Now, as you know, the Simpsons started out as bumpers on the Tracy Ullman show, and my goal was to and this is back in the mid to late 90s, was to make animation bumpers for shows on like Comedy Central, do silly humor stuff when they were still doing like the experimental stuff like Dr. Katz and those type of cartoons. And I was like, oh my God, my stuff would be great for bumpers. And then I realized all my single panels were basically just jokes for bumpers. And I'm like, wow, why didn't I pursue this more? Like I'm because I'm watching this on my iPad last night. So I'm laying in bed watching this. And I was explaining this to my wife, and I'm like, I really don't know what the heck happened, why I didn't pursue the bumpers. And like, I love that type of, 10-second, less than a minute joke. And I was really inspired, like, by The Simpsons, by those bumpers on the Tracy Ullman show. I remember being a kid, because that came out in 86, so I was 10 years old. And my father, it was probably both my parents, but I remember my father telling me I can't watch the Tracy Ullman show. He thought it was bad. He thought it wasn't a good show, for kids. And he's probably right. It probably wasn't for 10-year-olds. But to get to see that little 30 seconds, 1 minute, whatever it is, 10-second break of a joke continuing through the series. I just loved it. And that's why I was watching that when the Simpsons came out in 89, I was like, this is amazing. And to this day, I'm probably one of the few people who still watch The Simpsons regularly. It's I just
my family do.
Oh, okay, that's
It's
great.
a brilliant show.
I love it. And I was going back and I'm like, wow, like even when I was drawing on my Monday stream, I don't know if you remember me saying, but I'm like, I felt I got too Simpson of a look when I was trying to go more for Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah, I saw that. I remember that.
Yeah. So it was a very big influence. But as we get on to your comics and we move from,
but if you scroll up to the top, you can kind of see, like, oh yeah. So anyway, like, so I got rejected and ignored by all the syndicates.
Yeah.
Like everybody else, and then I went through like the 9 or 10 stages of cartoonist grief. I was like, I can't believe them. My strip is amazing. I thought they were stupid people, and then I was like crying, and then I was like, okay, what can I do now? All the different stages. And so then I took a break from Instagram for a while, and it's actually really refreshing. I got caught up in a lot of video games that I wanted to catch up on and TV shows. Because I was doing this one strip a day. This is like
takes a lot of time.
One strip a day is almost like a job. And then I have my full-time job, which is wonderful and I love it, which is video games and doing concept art and storyboards all day. And that's like amazing. And then I have my illustration job. We haven't talked about it too much, but I'm an illustrator for, I do books for Random House and children's books and style guides still. So that's like my night and weekends. And then I got my 5 kids and then 3 pets. And then on top of that, at the very end was like me trying to do a comic strip every day all of that at once. And I did it, and it kind of wore me down a lot,
Yeah.
I'm kind of almost glad they didn't like it, because I didn't even want to like keep it going at that rate. I think it's kind of a cool thing to do, maybe like in retirement, so I'm going to like keep plugging away. Yeah. So with that thought, like I thought, okay, I'm going to change gears and just sort of create this new idea where like, instead of just doing critters, and I love doing critters, I'm going to have rebranded kind of Erik Doescher strips and kind of have like a Sunday page full of comic strips, Mm-hmm. So I started this new one called Hondo and Gretel, which is kind of like different than critters in a way where like, the kids are kind of, I can do some fantasy stuff with like little castles and just like suburban kids and school buses and houses and things, because critters is all kind of like generic forest. Mm-hmm. And different kind of like, and Hondo and Gretel is like more evolving into like the storyline type stuff, kind of like you get Crabgrass on nowadays, like I could imagine them doing like these little adventures, for like a week or two, like going off to the castle to deliver something, or, trying to like rescue their cat who jumped through the school window on a Saturday or something like that, and just doing kind of like these long story gags with these 2 characters. And I could have fun with that, and then Critters is kind of like my gag a day type strip, which I really kind of, that's like probably my most natural thing to write, is just like an isolated gag a day, more like Peanuts style, different. Yeah. I just kind of go around, get inspired by something and write. And then I have like my Erik D Speaks thing too, where I kind of like break the fourth wall and just, instead of doing like announcements, I kind of just like talk to the viewers and then kind of about what I'm doing, and like I did one for your strip today,
Oh yes, I forgot to. We should go to that one. Which, by the way, there is a slight typo. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. I Get in Tune. I saw that.
No. The S. There's not an S.
Oh God!
The end of my name.
I Get in Tune as well.
Yeah, but it's okay. A lot of people mess up the Get in Tune. I don't care about that. I mean, I don't even care about my name being messed up, and I think it's cool that I'm.
Oh, I forgot the R as well. Oh my God.
I missed the R. I saw the extra. Listen, it's totally cool. I'm just honored that I was part of your strip. Okay, that's all right. That's how I felt.
Anyways, my guy's going like looking for the waves, and so I had to draw Zippy, which was really hard. And I actually got to meet the artist at the Rubens because my friend Charlie is his editor at Abrams.
Oh, cool.
And he's kind of a cool guy, you know, kind of a sort of a how I imagine he would be. And so I just kind of figured out like all of these whiz characters and like guys like trying to look for your whiz guy, you know. It was fun drawing in like the BC style a lot because I grew up on those guys. And I was just trying to draw in your style on that one. You like the more that.
No, listen, you got it pretty good there. I mean, I love it.
But anyway, I got my Erik speech.
Dude,
That's probably like my way of announcing stuff to the viewers. I got a few other ideas. I want to do like a totally dialogue-free comic that's kind of like more in that Mad Magazine style, the Sergio. But yeah.
You know, it's funny when you were talking about reject. I just want to share the story since you brought Sergio up. He is my all-time favorite artist. I've mentioned that a dozen times on this show. I love Sergio's work. I've met him a handful of times. And one time back in, it had to be like 2001, 2002, I met him at a Comic-Con on the East Coast, and I gave him actually a copy of one of my joke comic. Like it wasn't a story. It wasn't a story. It was like just random gags and stuff that I did. And he took a couple of minutes, flipped through it, and he told me I should send it to Matt. Now, I didn't know if he was being serious or not, but I sent it to Matt. I sent them to Matt. I wrote it this letter. I said, I met Sergio at the show. He told me you guys would love my stuff. I didn't know if they thought I was lying, but I was telling the story about what happened. They sent me a form letter back saying it isn't the form, and I just I was like so angry. I'm like, screw it, Matt isn't funny anyway. And I just kind of walked.
Yeah, the stages agreed. Yeah.
Yet I bought Mad like the next.
Oh, month. Absolutely. And
it was.
I'm still reading King Features comics.
Yeah. But
I actually worked for King. I was actually briefly. I worked for King Features early on in my cartooning career when I was starting to do stuff for DC Comics. I was working on a style guide everywhere else, for King Features, Phantom 2049. I know that show is kind of like an Aeon Flux animation style. It's actually kind of cool. Yeah. And I had never heard of that Phantom before, to be honest. So I was kind of new to him. And my art director said, oh, they need a new like inker for the Sunday strip. And I'm like, no, I don't really know about this Phantom too well, but like I figured I accepted because I basically take everything. And and I thought like it might be a good in, because I'm like doing that, and I could always like maybe pitch some other ideas to the editor or something like that I wanted to actually work on. And so I started working on the Phantom Sunday strip, and I was kind of like the finisher inker. And at the time, I think George Olson was doing the layouts, and they were really beautiful, beautiful work, but very kind of like loose. You would get them, and it's like. But not loose in a bad way, just loose in a really eloquent, beautiful way. He was a really great artist. But I'd have to go in and like draw, like figure out, the exact horse anatomy and the leaves and stuff like that, and then go and ink it. And it was, I might have even colored at the time too. So it was very like time consuming to do. And so I definitely appreciate that strip a lot more after I started working on it.
Yeah.
And but after a while, it became like it was just too much. It was just too hard to do, too much work, and so I started to farm it out like to other artists that I knew, and that wasn't going to work because that was just a real pain in the butt to do, and it wasn't as consistent as anybody would have liked, And so they finally found another artist to work on it. I think Fred Fredericks came on. But
what year was this, if you don't mind me asking? Like what time?
It was like in the mid '90s.
Okay. I was still reading it then. I mean, the Phantom was never part of my local paper, but when I'd go
mine either.
Yeah, go visit my family in Brooklyn, they'd have the Daily News where I'd get to see it, and I'm just a huge Phantom fan. So I just think that's awesome.
Helping me out, and he was like really into Mike McNoll at the time, and there's like really cool stuff. But kind of started getting like more and more kind of like Bill Sienkiewicz, Mike McNolla-ish. We weren't very happy with that. Like features either. And so they said, maybe you should just like let us take it over again. And I was like, fine, because I'm like, I don't really want to work on it anymore. But the cool thing is I got to meet like Lee Falk, and he was a really like wonderful guy. I got to go to his apartment a few times. his apartment, like, God, you couldn't ask for a better one in New York City. Like, half of it is a huge apartment. Half the windows look down to the roof of the Museum of Natural History, and the other half of the windows looked out all into Central Park. He was right in the corner of like 71st Street or something like that.
Yeah.
And I got to go into his house and like his apartment and kind of sit down with him and talk to him a few times because we're all kind of local in the city. He's really like a wonderful, wonderful man who knows so much about, the history of comics, and it was a real delight to actually meet him. I didn't have much fun working on the strip, but I was really glad to have worked with him and gotten to meet him.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to load up some of your other pages right now. But man, to be able to know Lee Falk, to get to sit down and talk to him. There's so many artists out there like that I would love to have done that with, that are old timers who have passed away. Who kind of basically, developed. I mean, of all of them, you think of Lee Falk as, I mean, people give him credit as really defining the superhero genre.
Yeah,
like
it's pretty amazing. At the and it turns out my girlfriend at the time, who is not my wife now, she's my girlfriend at the time, but anyway, her family was in the Upper West Side, and they knew Lee Falk, and so I got to visit Lee Falk at his like house in the Cape Cod at one point too, because they had summered in Cape Cod together, so the families knew each other, and so like Lee was like, "Oh yeah, come on down, like if you're at the Cape and visit my house." So he had a house in Cape Cod also, which was amazing.
Wow.
So it was kind of a cool experience, despite that kind of how hard it was to do the actual strip. But I'm glad to have met him. And I went to the Rubens for the Cartoonist Society. That was the first one I attended. And Greg Walker, it's not Mort Walker, but his son, he's been working on Beetle Bailey for like, I think 30 years. He actually follows critters, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And comments on the strip sometimes, so it's like really neat. And I got to meet him and talk to him a little bit.
Yeah, I've met Greg. I had a good friend who passed away a couple of years ago. His name was Dan Necrosis. I don't know if you ever knew Dan. He was running the New Jersey chapter, and I went to one of the holiday parties with Dan at that was in New York City, and I got to sit with Greg, and we chatted for a little bit. And I mean, there's some fun stories I can tell you offline, but I will say this: not this week, last week, I saw that Greg liked 2 of the Wiz strips, and I geeked out. I screenshot it where it said like. I'm like, oh my god! I ran to my wife. I'm like, you'll never believe it. I mean, and she was like, why do I know that name? And I'm like, I just like kind of. I won't say I ran around the house going nuts, but I was like, it's super exciting.
You
like
nerd out on Beetle Bailey. That's allowed.
What?
You can nerd out on Beetle Bailey.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. Like, I grew up loving Beetle Bailey, Mort Walker. His work was always one of my big inspirations. I've always those were 2 of the first strips I would read because of how much I loved it. And then as I got old, like, okay, I geeked out once because Bruce Blitz liked a comic of mine that I posted.
Yeah.
And I grew up with the Bruce Blitz, video tutorials on how to make comics and how to draw cartoons and all that stuff. And by the way, I've had him on here, so you guys go back a couple of years. It was a fun interview. I love, it was great meeting Bruce, and I have back over there, I don't know if you could see it in the background, that little, it's a caricature he did of me when I met him. Cool. And so like when he liked my work, like the first time I really like geeked out. I'm like, oh my god, it was almost like your teacher saying you did a good job, and I just love that. And I had the same experience when John Wesley Shipp, who played the Flash, sent me a wave on Facebook. And I was like, oh my god, how long do I wait before I wave back to him,
Yeah, that's really cool when they follow you. Like
Yeah.
when because it makes your day. I mean, we're all kind of like
Yeah.
fans, so it's kind of cool. Like
Yeah.
Instagram doesn't give you very much satisfaction, so like when it does, it's kind of really cherished.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Otherwise, it's a cruel beast.
Well, I pulled up a couple of your other pages. Let's take a look at them.
Oh, sure. So
Because you know what, I mean, I don't think I follow them yet. I've hardly had. I'll tell you, when I go on like Instagram, I'm rarely like it's post and get off, and then I go and then I'll spend maybe 10 minutes a day.
yeah, then maybe Instagram will show you any of the latest strips from the people that you follow or not. Based
Yeah.
on the algorithm of the day.
So we're on Eric D sketches, which I don't follow, but I'm
Actually, it
about
used to
to.
be called Erik Doescher. This is my first Instagram account.
Oh, really?
It's that's kind of mostly like my Gearbox stuff. Like that's a comic page I did just for fun for with these Borderlands characters. So I like fan art that I do for the games that I make. But if I
Cool.
drew comics, it'd be kind of like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Wow, this is just beautiful stuff already. Let's see. Oh, here's. I really love your kid style. I really do.
yeah, that was that spring comic I was telling you about that I did for like a tie-in for Critters that one day. But I mean, yeah, I have a lot of fun doing that just because it's like kind of over the top.
Yeah, I love this stuff.
And I do a lot of single panels for them. And so there's more Gearbox stuff, like I did my holiday one last year. That girl's Tiny Tina, she's a little crazy.
I love it. I love it. And you got some beautiful stuff here. Wow. And this is your storyboarding?
I have some of the rough storyboards I did. Usually they're a little bit more like polished, but that was the intro for Tiny Tina Wonderlands at the first pass I did on that. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, no, it's great stuff.
Most of the stuff I do for Gearbox I can't really show, because I'm working on games that haven't been announced yet, or I did a bunch of work for the Borderlands movie that's not coming out until like next August. So I can't show any of the stuff that I work on. Oh, if you click on that pencil art, you might dig it. Like
this one?
Yeah, that was something I did for DC.
Oh,
really Hanna-Barbera stuff.
Oh, wow.
DC Comics or Warner Brothers 2 or 3 years ago. They called me. Actually, the one art director who Joe Orlando forced me to use, who I still work with. And she said, it's a Friday, and she said, okay, by Monday, we need you to draw this wacky racer thing with 50 or 60 characters in it, and we're gonna have it painted. And she sent over a bunch of reference and said, can you do it? And I said, okay. And so the whole weekend I was basically creating this big drawing. As you kind of go, you can scroll through and get some close-ups, but it's kind of cool to do, because it's the first time I had drawn this kind of stuff from when I was young, and putting it all together in a big composition was a lot of fun. And apparently it got painted and all that. It was an internal pitch they were doing for something, and I never got to see the painting, but
I would love to see more of these characters out in the public eye.
Yeah, I loved that show. That was one of my favorite shows when I was growing up. Obviously, another big influence on me too.
Love McGill Gorilla.
Yeah, I know. It was really fun, going through all those and rediscovering all those characters that I kind of forgotten about, and trying to cram them all into a composition.
Yeah, I couldn't tell who this was. Okay, that Ghost Chaser's there. Devlin right there.
Yeah, it's got literally there's 50 characters in here at least.
I know. Wheelie from the Chopper Bunch. God, I could probably name every character here. I'm not going to, but I probably could. Oh wow, with maybe a couple of names that I don't remember, but wow, man, this is gorgeous. I love it.
Yes, that was really fun to do. Maybe I should follow up with one day and get to look at the coloring, because that was going to look really cool.
Yeah, this just is beautiful though, right there. Yeah, wow, so good, man. He did such a great job on that.
But the rest of this page is kind of like I was doing a lot of like Borderlands scamp stuff, and it's like single panels. That was like Inktober one year that I was doing. So it's basically like me sketching and kind of fan art and fun art. You know, it's not like kind of all over the place. You know.
No, it's great though. I love how you know how different your styles are that we can see on this one here. You know, just going here's the kids, and then you go even over to this.
Yeah,
You know?
like the realistic type style.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I love it. Look at this, man.
Yeah, that
So
was
nice.
one of our openings that we did for our game.
Yeah. Wow. So cool.
But a good example of scams probably is like if you exit out the black and white with red, you know, it's like as a single panel, like so basically
sanitizer.
Like, that was during COVID, you know, but like
Yeah.
That's what's fun about that strip, you know, you can just kind of go totally bonkers and crazy with it.
Now, are you a traditional or digital artist?
All digital.
Oh, this is all digital. Okay.
When I started working at Gearbox, I actually kind of gave up on art for a little bit because level design was actually a really big hobby of mine at the time. Like I would draw when I was freelancing, I would basically draw during the day, and then at night I would be level designing, you know, like Half-Life and Unreal and stuff like that. And then I got the job at Gearbox for my level design. I kind of focused on that for a while, and then like these Cintiqs came out, and I was like, oh wow, like art's like fun again, you know, because I never really liked hand drawing very much, and with this digital, you can kind of just go crazy and erase, and you know, it's like a lot more. It was really freeing for me. Then I started getting into art more and got back into concept art and my illustration stuff after that.
Nice.
But it's all digital now.
And so let me ask you, just being the art geek and the digital art geek I am, what program do you draw in?
I do in Photoshop.
Okay, you're all Photoshop.
Yeah, that's what I use for my Gearbox stuff and my storyboards and for everything.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean,
that was an early version.
I experiment with so many different things. I just play with everything. I mean, I was talking. I forgot who I spoke with about this. It was a week or two ago. I'm just, I like no Photoshop like the back of my hand, but I just really do love Clip Studio Paint to draw in sometimes. I go between both of them depending on what I'm in the mood to do.
It's kind of funny. Like Photoshop is this. I've heard people say it before, but Photoshop is like really, it's a kind of a complex. It can do lots of things.
Yeah.
I probably only use Photoshop for like at 1% of its capability ever.
Yeah.
You know, and so I buy this. I you know, like I lease this thing every month, and I'm using like 1% of its probably total functionality, but that's all I need it for. You know.
Yeah. I tend to always use it more also as, you know, for illustration, but I also do some design work in there, like all the ads I put out for this show is all done in Photoshop. All my even if I draw in Clip Studio, and the reason I do it is because I pay for it. You know, well, I pay for it on the iPad. I have a subscription, but I paid a one-time fee for it on my computer, but I do have the subscription to the Adobe suite, because without that, I can't do any design work. I don't like, or I can't get used to what's everyone talking about? I can't think of the name of it now. There's another. It's like a European company that people are saying take over for like Adobe. I don't remember right now, but it's like a one-time payment, and people are loving them, and it's a way to get out of working with Adobe's subscription-based stuff. And I just can't get into that software. I love Photoshop way too much, and I start thinking that, hey, I might be a complete Photoshop kind of guy, you know.
I mean, there's really fancy storyboard software too that I could learn to use one day, but I just really love working in Photoshop, and I just know it. I know all the shortcuts. I'm like super fast in it, and so it just works, you know. Yeah. Anyway, I just started this Erik Doescher thing and get a pattern now going, and I thought I named my sites, and this is basically where I dump like illustration work that I do, Like I do a lot of like licensed publishing for Random House, basically.
Yeah, I know these characters. I can't place them.
Yeah, God, I can't remember what their names were. Top Flight is a kind of kid show. Um, I did a Richard Scarry book this year, which was a um, big thing for me because I grew up like loving Richard Scarry, books, and being able to draw like a whole book. This is the tryout piece that I did for it. I can't really show anything for the book because it's kind of too small. But
Still waiting. Yeah. Oh,
that's
there's that.
from before. I just put it in there.
Yeah.
Hanna-Barbera. And then like I've been working like for Random House for easily over 20 years, but I've never cracked into the whole Seuss thing. And growing up, another artist, probably like as big as, Schultz or Frazette or Rockwell, was Dr. Seuss when I was a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have I have a great book. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's called The Secret Art of Dr. Seuss.
I have that. Mm-hmm.
Oh, and it's like the sculptures and paintings and stuff that he. Oh.
And Random House publishes Dr. Seuss, and like I could never crack into that like thing. And so like, I had kind of an editor with me like a year or two ago who was kind of who I was friends with, and so I said finally, okay, last year was I'm going to do a strip every day. The year before that was like I want to get a Seuss job, so every few weeks I started creating like a pretend page from a Seuss book, like what we're seeing here. These are examples of what I kind of mocked up. Yeah. And then my friend would send them to the Dr. Seuss editorial team at Random House, who I didn't know any of them. And then I kept doing that for like 7, 8, or 9 months, like a new image every month. Didn't hear anything like for a year. And then suddenly like I finally got an email from them like, oh, can you do like, you want to try out for like a Sneetches book that we're working on? And I did, and then I got the job. So it was just like I sent enough of those Seuss pictures to them to kind of get their attention finally, Yeah,
these are gorgeous. I love this stuff.
My dream is to actually write like a Seuss book one day because I love doing that kind of like poetry and writing. So maybe after I do a few illustration books for them, I'll kind of press them for the writing part too.
Yeah, I wrote something that I want to illustrate that has a very Dr. Seuss-like feel, but it's a little darker than what Dr. Seuss did. Mm-hmm. So it's not going to be very kid-friendly. Not that it's not kid-friendly. It's a very nice story. I just don't know if it, what age group it's for yet. So I'm trying to figure out how I would illustrate it. But
so these aren't Seuss books. They're just like the examples that are like.
No, I get it. It's of how you lay it out.
Their attention.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you got the font down. It looks like to me, you got everything.
Yeah, I was trying to get everything like exactly right on this. It makes sense that there'd be a Lorax recycling book too. I want to totally pitch that to them one of these days. Yeah. And I'm working on one of the books I'm working on right now. These Star Wars books. The boy character actually started following this account. Like the voice actor is kind of cool.
And this is the new series, right?
Series, yeah. Okay. And then there's more Seuss stuff that I was doing. I haven't posted all the Seuss samples that I barraged them with yet, but these are some of them. Yeah, this idea for like a book for like in the spirit of like if I ran the circus or the zoo, like imagine a book where like there's like a different Seussian holiday every page, like upside down day or stick out your tongue day, kind of stuff like that.
Yeah.
And with cool illustrations, that'd be totally cool, I think.
Well, this is Rugrats.
It's Rugrats. I do a lot of Nickelodeon books.
Cool.
I did some Turtles stuff too for the movie, but I haven't posted those yet. And then more of my Seuss.
For which movie are you talking about?
The new Mayhem one.
The what?
The Mayhem movie.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Oh, that's my first book that the cover's released, but the book doesn't come out until May.
Nice.
Yeah, Sneetches, that was a tough one. Like so many Sneetches, they hang out in big groups. So that's a lot of drawing. I was like, why didn't you give me just the Cat in the Hat one where there's like one character the whole time? Sneetches, which has like 50 characters per page. But it's fun.
And then you got
yeah, that's another idea I had, like kind of like an alphabet book, but characters being kind of naughty,
Yeah. Man, this is great though. Oh, I guess we're at the end.
Yeah, I just started this one, and that's like
Little Pony.
Yeah, it's Corn and Peg. That's another Nickelodeon property. And actually, this book with these two ponies got me the Star Wars job because they kind of liked how I did the flat coloring and then the kind of grainy stuff and this kind of scratchy stuff in the background.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted me to kind of use that style on the Star Wars characters. So
it's nice. It's I love the look of this here.
And that kind of gets back to the whole style guide. You have to draw the characters exactly how they are, and it's the style guide's been really the backbone of my at least illustration career.
Yeah. Great poses, man. Great poses.
Wow. Yeah, it's a fun book. No, that's one that's kind of hard. A lot of indoors stuff.
Wow, man, you got so much awesome stuff. Yeah, oh, we got Life on Saturn who's tuning in. He says, amazing work.
Thanks.
Yes, Life on Saturn, they will be my guests the last show for the year.
Oh, awesome.
At the end of this month. Life of Saturn. If you guys get to check it out, go look up Life on Saturn. Is it Life on Saturn Productions, your Instagram? Let me just do a quick check. I think it's. Did I hit the? I can't even see what I'm hitting.
Mm-hmm.
Can't wait for my new glasses to come on. And Life on Saturn. Let's do Life on Saturn Productions. Let's see if that's not the page. I follow them though, so let's go to search.
It's of.
Yeah, that's my problem here. Okay, hold on. Let me take a step back. Life on. Life on Saturn Comics. This is the beautiful.
Cool.
Yeah, I love these people. Their work. I have my copy of. Is this it? Yeah, right here.
Wow.
So
beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Great work. I look forward to talking with them. So they really do beautiful work here. I love everything. Every time I see their work, I'm amazed. So this was a friend of theirs did. That's
neat. Got the turtles going on too.
All right, guys. I'm not going to keep showing this. This is for a couple of weeks away. We'll leave them as more of a surprise for you. But yes, thanks. Life on Saturn Comics. Let me stop the share here. Stop. All right. Now, before I think we're gonna wrap up in a moment, but before we go, I want to put your link to your Instagram for your comics in there, and they could find off your comic page a link to your other pages. But so if you go on Instagram, it's Erik with a K D strips. So Erik D strips. And you'll find so. Now let me ask you a question before we start wrapping up. You've been kind of looking down a little bit and drawing. What are you working on? Is that a new comic that we can look at, or is that actual work that we can't look at?
I'm working on a comic strip right now, which is kind of like my Christmas strip. So
Okay.
I'll send it out. I'll probably make it a 4-square thing and like send it out to clients next week, and then post it like the day before Christmas.
Okay.
On my Instagram. So, I mean, I don't know how to share screens or anything like that, but.
Well, I mean, I could tell you, but if it's for your clients, let it be a surprise.
It's not that big a deal, but you can kind of see how like my roughs and inking look like.
I mean, if you want to do it, I'll tell you right now. There's a thing on there that'll either say present or share. I think it says present.
Oh, present.
So you click the button that says present, and then it'll ask you what screen. There'll be if I hit it just so I can see, you say screen share, I believe. And then
sharing tips.
And then for me, it breaks it up. I go to window, and then I click on the window that I want to share.
Oh.
And what'll happen is it'll appear to me, and I hit
Huh.
add. So now we can see this.
So anyway, that's a little comic strip that I'm working on. You can see I'm inking this last panel.
Okay.
And I hit, we have the words exposed right now, so you kind of, but
Okay.
it's basically one of those Eric D speaks things like, "Hey, how you doing?" And then like it has like a Christmas theme after
Now
that.
is there a template you made up that you use, or
Yeah, I use like a panel template that's just the same, and yeah. So and then I have like text. I use like a font. It's called like CC Meanwhile, I think, which is like really great for lettering. So I have it all kind of like lettered there already. And then this is kind of like the detail that I work off of, you know. Like before this, you can kind of see like what my sketch was like when I was just laying it out for the first time. I was kind of like, oh crap, writing in. I don't have the writing stuff anymore, but like,
yeah, you really go in with
so
a
I kind
lot
of start off like that, and then I kind of go to that, and then I just kind of go to that over that.
Nice. I got to.
Use the grid when you're doing, because I saw you doing like the your turnarounds, and you were like drawing all these lines across for your grid. But do you ever use the grid function in Photoshop for that kind of stuff?
No, I never really tried the grid function.
Toggling it on and off is like so useful and easy and fast.
No, I mean I have showed it to people in teaching, but I tend to not use it myself. Hold on, I'm going to pull something up real quick. I don't know why it's not showing up on Open Recent. Oh, here it is. Because what I want to show you is
yeah, you can get rid of the screen now if you want.
Okay. I'm gonna since you just showed your process, I'm gonna show yesterday's whiz. Let me remove. And you have to hit the stop the share.
Oh, okay, I see.
I believe. Yep.
So
I'm gonna share my whiz from yesterday.
I use Teams at work, and it's nowhere near as easy as this.
So this is the strip that came out today.
Yeah.
I'll just zoom in on it for a second so you guys can take a moment if you haven't had a chance to read it. At the Wiz Comic, by the way, 1Z. So right now the font, I'm changing fonts up. I'm always playing with different fonts to see what I like. And right now I'm using what's called Sunday Comics, all in caps. So anyway.
Meanwhile, it didn't come default with Photoshop, but it's a really great font. I had to pay for it. It was like $5 or whatever, but it's the best thing I ever did for sure.
Yeah, I'm always looking. I might have to get a paid font. But anyway, let me close this up here. All these layers that I'm about to turn off. Let's see. So what I have here is I have a template I made. That's a full panel strip if I want to use it. I have a 3-panel. I have a 4-panel set up, and they're evenly broken up. And then where are my pencils?
These papers are
what?
Well, Instagram, so all my stuff is square.
Yeah, I cut mine up. I should go square with everything, but I cut mine up hopefully to fit. So this is kind of the loose as I draw, or as tight as I draw in pencils for myself when I'm inking. And then I'll go into the inks, which is probably number 7. Nope, number 5. And I go in, and you can see like on my pencils, the rabbits I just kind of loosely put in. But then when I did all of them, I just kind of went over spots, and very few were actually in the real spot. And then I color on separate layers. I used to color all on one layer, but I kept messing up. So, you could see me just putting them back in here. The pieces. And then I had this the background color. And I always do the text above. And whoops, what did I turn on? I turned on and then I have the balloons all on another layer. And that's how I put it together. Something like this took me about 2 hours to do. You know, but
I think my strips took me like 2 hours.
yeah. When I do more detail though, I have started at like 9 p.m. because I told you I get off at 7:30. So usually it's make and eat dinner and then rest a little bit and then in there. But I could be in my studio from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. drawing, and working on the whiz or something else. Yeah, but I'm gonna have to try that grid method for my for the next guy I do for the animation, working with the grids.
I mean, sometimes it's nice to have a permanent grid that you can kind of fade
Yeah.
and just keep behind the characters, because you can't keep the Photoshop toggle.
Something I learned in animation is thank you, Dylan, by the way. So was because the way I started in animation, we didn't, I wasn't on the computer. I was doing stuff by hand. I'm not used to having all those guidelines and grids in there. It's here's a ruler, maybe a T-square, something, triangle, whatever, to help you kind of get your angles and go. So like when I animate, when I animated the guy, I'm used to like eyeing things. It also kind of helps, I feel, with understanding sizing instead of always relying on something, a tool to help you. It kind of just, I think it helps train your eye. That's just a personal feeling towards it. Can't say it's true for me, can't say it's true for anyone, but I feel like if I try not to, I don't want to be reliant constantly on tools. I want to be able to know that I'm drawing, I can size properly, with just my eyes. So I tend to do that. But also, like I did when I was drawing that character on Monday night, I kind of just put in his basic shape on another layer of his body just to use as a guideline, and made the slight adjustments as I needed them, just to help me out, instead of
totally
measuring out, okay, he's, his body should be 3 heads wide or so, I just kind of, sometimes I like to eye it, and as long as it looks good, I'm good. And if I have to go to the tools, I'll go to the tools.
We could do a whole show on Photoshop, to be honest.
What?
We could do a whole show on Photoshop, just stuck.
Oh my God! Yeah. I mean, listen, I taught Photoshop from the late '90s regularly until about 2017.
That'd be cool to invite like 2 or 3 artists and just like dedicate a show to Photoshop, and then just like that's the whole hour and a half we're talking about Photoshop.
Listen, I could do that. I haven't done that yet. Usually, everything. Hold on, let's see what Life in Saturn says. Get to the right screen, mouse. There we go. 100% in InDesign. I end up eyeing everything. What's it say of our letters? Wow. Oh, Lydia, that's part of the team. Yeah, I don't know. I just like that. But yeah, no, listen, I could do things on programs in general. Just sit there.
Yeah, totally.
And say, hey, listen, I'm not going to talk. You show me your method, then have another artist show me their method, and then I show mine, and we just
trade ideas and methods.
Yeah, I think that's great. I do. I think that is a great idea. Haley R says, you're crazy talented and versatile, Eric.
Haley, thank you.
Yep. I'm not going to disagree. That's great. All right. You know what? I think we should wrap up.
This was cool. Thank you for having me. I could
anytime.
Talk for a lot longer, and maybe one other day.
Listen, I'm sure we can go for a lot longer too. It's just I had my work day was a very long day, so I'm
like I said, I gotta watch Fargo before I go to bed.
You're watching the series?
Yeah, I love that show.
I haven't started that yet. I hear it's really good.
It's amazing.
I'll get to it one day. I mean, listen, do you know how far behind on television I am? 3
Well,
weeks
I'm really
ago.
far behind on television, but Fargo basically jumps to the top of the stack
Okay.
whenever it comes out for me.
No, 3 weeks ago I finished The Sopranos finally. That's how far
I'm not
behind
that
I
far.
am. Well, you know what? Here's the thing, and I believe I've said it on the air. I feel when I'm watching TV, I'm wasting time. I feel like I could be in the studio writing or drawing or doing something more productive than sitting down, even reading a comic book or a regular book or something. I feel is more productive than watching TV. I love television. I love storytelling, but sometimes when I'm sitting there watching TV, I start feeling bad because I feel like I could be doing something else.
I watch a lot of TV while I work, I'm just head
I'll
down
do
and
that.
drawing. But like something like there's a few shows, like Game of Thrones or Fargo or whatever that are very cinematic that I have to like actually go to my big screen and sit in front and
Yeah.
dedicate time to.
Yeah, I watch shows I used to watch.
Yeah.
Like I'll watch older shows. Like right now, while I work, I usually put on Stargate Atlantis. I'm a big Stargate. Stargate's my favorite sci-fi. Sorry for all the Star Trek guys and Star Wars people. Stargate truly is, excuse me, my favorite science fiction. I've watched every series, SG-1, Atlantis,
Awesome.
and Universe. I don't know how many times. But a couple of weeks ago, I felt like throwing on Atlantis one day, and I'm in season 3 now. So, but I've watched the series at least 4 times. That it doesn't, I don't have to ever look at it, and I could just listen to the
I have
story.
never seen a Stargate episode. I've seen Star Wars and Star Trek, but never watched Stargate.
Well, I will say this: start with the film, the actual film, and then go. I mean, you technically don't need to see the film to get into the series, the SG-1, which is what started it, the series. But the film from 1994, that's what drew me in. And then when I found out they had a Stargate show, I was like, okay, let me get into this. And
the film is reclining chair, big screen worthy. I'm not watching it
for the film, definitely. For the film, definitely, and maybe for the first 2 or 3 episodes. The first episode is like one of those shows where it was an hour episode and to be continued, so it was a 2-parter, and it's the only one that has a little nudity in it because when it first came out, it was on Showtime, and then it moved to a cable channel or something. So when it moved to the off the premium channels, that stuff disappeared. But I think it's a really good series. Season 1 of SG-1, they're still getting their feet wet in places, kind of testing the water, see what works, what doesn't work. And there's changes they had to make from the movie to the series that you got to kind of accept. But it's like in the 90s when Highlander came out as a series. It was, Connor won in 86 when he took the Kurgan's head. But now we have a new, we have Duncan who's the new Highlander, and Connor's Klansman from another time period. I'm sorry, I was into all that stuff. I mean, listen, I thought Highlander was like my greatest movie of all time for a very long time. But it's always going to be First Blood now, I think. Every time I go back to it, I think.
Yeah, I just rewatched that recently.
Oh, I love that movie. Anyway, let's see. What does he say? Hard to find a bad sci-fi series franchise. Yeah, I mean, that is true. That is true. But I haven't watched them all yet. So, but remember, the 90s put out some really bad stuff. Like when they tried to make the Beastmaster TV series. Was that the late 90s, early 2000s? I don't know if I put this up from Brian. Best Erik that ever Eriked. So anyway, let me wrap this up. I'm going to drop you backstage if you can hang out for a few minutes.
Sure.
Thanks again for coming on. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you. You made it really easy. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I'm nervous these kind of things. So.
Don't be. I understand, but I hope you were relaxed.
No, it was fun. Thank you.
All right, man. Awesome. So I'll drop backstage. I'll talk to you in a minute.
Okay.
All right, guys. I just had a quick announcement I forgot to announce. I forgot to say at the beginning, and you may have seen it already on my Instagram, and I think I put it up on my Facebook. but I just wanted to share this. This Saturday, if you're in the Poughkeepsie, New York area, that's Poughkeepsie, Fishkill, Wappingers Falls area, head on over to the Poughkeepsie Galleria Saturday, December 16th between 10 and 5 p.m. There is the Incredicon, which is a comic and pop culture fest. I'm going to have some Wiz prints there. My Zorro, I can't call it my Zorro book, but the Zorro book I illustrated, and I only got like 4 copies left. So you can come get them while they're there. I'm going to have some other artwork, but I'm also in the process of purging some of my personal collections of comic books, of toys, of DVDs. They will be there for sale as well. And in addition to me, there's tons of other great artists and vendors. Please make sure you come to that. If you're in the area, it's going to be a great time to start doing some quick mid-minute holiday shopping, right? Yeah, in the meantime, please follow, there it is, at the Wiz Comic on Instagram and Facebook. Next week I'll be doing my holiday show where a bunch of artists will be coming on and we'll be chatting. Again, thank you to Erik for coming on, and check out his Instagram, Erik with a K, Erik D Strips, and you can find his other Instagram pages there. So with that, you guys, thanks for tuning in. I had a great time tonight. I will see you all soon. Bye, guys.